I have always been in favor of the designated hitter, but not for the purpose of just juicing up the game for the sake of more runs, but to solve this problem. This graph shows the batting average of the different 9 positions in the National League in 2016. Starting with 281 for second baseman was the highest. And then we go down to right fielders at 254. Everybody else is in a narrow range here, close to each other. Then all of a sudden, when you get to the pitcher, you have this huge drop-off all the way down to 135. This very low batting average creates too much of a dead spot in the order, and I believe for the good of baseball, it should be closer in line with these. Somewhere close. I do not blame the pitchers one bit for this. Ted Williams said that hitting a baseball is the hardest act in all of sports. I would say that pitching is just as difficult. It is totally unrealistic to expect more than a few to do both at the major league level. Now people say, well, in Little League, the best athletes could both pitch and hit. But this isn't Little League. This is the most elite level of baseball in the world. Those against the DH make analogies such as, why don't you just have a designated hitter for any weak hitter in the lineup? Or a designated runner for catchers? Or a designated free throw shooter for Wilt Chamberlain? The answer is because those things are very minor. Just a few players a little bit worse than the others. So I must show you how huge this problem is when you ask pitchers to do something totally out of their realm. First of all, pitchers in the National League in 2016 struck out at a 39% rate versus 22% for the rest of the league. And several pitchers over 50%, some as high as 62%. Now you need 75 starting pitchers in the National League, 5 per team times 15 teams. And it turns out in 2016, 60 of them were batting less than 200. You can only get 15 pitchers batting over 200. And 200 is the minimum standard for any other hitter, but very few pitchers can top that. And it turns out out of those top 75, 20 of those 60 were even less than 100, which is 27% of your pitchers can't even break 100. Then if we look at World Series stats over the last several years, from 2009 through 2016, there are 23 games in which pitchers had to bat. And the American League pitchers were 4 for 44 for just an .091 average. National League pitchers not much better, 6 for 47 for a 128 average. That's in 23 games, only 4 hits for the American League, 6 for the National. And both leagues had a strikeout rate of 42% for their pitchers. And notice sacrifice bunts did not make up for it. American League only 4 in 23 games, National League only 2 sacrifice bunts in 23 games. And even in the regular season, pitchers don't make up for it by bunting. 74% of the time, they can't bunt because there's no one on base or 2 outs. And their sacrifice bunts in the regular season only amount to 8% of their plate appearances. So I hope you see how trivial those analogies are in comparison. Those do not have anything like 60 of 75 players being below a minimum standard, nor any huge drop between the lowest and second lowest at something like this 135 versus 254. So I hope you see how trivial and invalid any such analogies are. The purpose of the DH is not to maximize offense by any means possible, but to correct a major discrepancy like this. Some people say the American League should dump the DH. Looking at these stats, I hope you can see why we won't be doing that. We would not gain any speed, versatility, or get better defense because we can't replace the DH with a fast, versatile fielder somewhere. Instead, we have to replace the DH with a 135 hitter and all these other bad stats I've shown you. That would be a tremendous downgrade. Again, we cannot blame the pitchers for this because there are a couple of very unique circumstances that apply only to the pitcher. Number one, teams need a pitcher's talent on the mound so much that they don't even consider their hitting ability when making personnel decisions. So to the teams, pitching is all that matters. His hitting is totally irrelevant to getting him into the major leagues. They don't have the luxury of considering his hitting. They need him too badly. And also, lack of practice. The common reason for why pitchers do not hit well is that they cannot practice it enough, and of course they can't get very much game experience either. So that makes me ask the question, why are we assigning a talented athlete like a pitcher a second job that has nothing to do with what got him into the major leagues, for which he cannot adequately prepare for, and then be oblivious to how well or poorly he does that job? I think this is a bad situation to be in. Are we doing this for the sake of versatility? But being versatile means good at second thing, not just doing it. So because of these unique circumstances and the resulting low hitting stats that they cause by the pitchers, I think we must really question the concept of having pitchers bat. More on this in my next video.